Easter 4. Alleluia, Christ is risen, he's risen indeed, alleluia. I still need to be saying this, and I think I want to say it in these current circumstances, partly to remind myself that we're still in the Easter season, but partly, I suppose, also to convince myself of the reality and hope of Easter. I've just had a delightful week off with fantastic weather and lots of walking on paths around Exeter, discovering routes that I simply didn't know before. And some of you will remember that last Lent, or the Lent before, I decided to read Dante's Inferno, Hell, in English, that long epic poem. And I did complete this, so when I picked up that same volume again last week, I'd reached Purgatory, still circles around which Dante and his guide Virgil travel, but this time going upwards. It seemed appropriate reading material for the current circumstances. My reading and my walking taught me two fairly obvious things. That people who are normally generous and self-giving are more generous and self-giving now, and that those who are self-centred and mean are more self-centred and mean now. And remembering Donald Tusk's comment about Brexiteers, I do wonder if there is some special circle of hell or purgatory for those who cycle too fast, too close, or for joggers who pass me by while wheezing and panting. The message conveyed to us by these two readings, by the reading from Acts and from John, seems to be that the early Christian community found fullness of life, abundance of life, in John's words, in the sharing not just of bread and wine, but of their possessions, so that things were held in common, and a surplus given away to those in need. As I've said in the reflection on the pew sheets, it's not hugely obvious who those recipients were, whether they were a close community, a slightly wider community, or into the general community at that time. But by contrast, John's reading is clear about the flock who gather around him and follow the one true shepherd. And reasonably enough, we interpret this as the Christian community. However, it seems to me that the requirement, the duty which is inscribed by faith to share generously, goes much beyond simply those who have Christianity in common. It's as if we said, for example, when giving to our St. Thomas Community larder, please make sure this food only goes to Christians or people like us. Put like that, it doesn't sound generous at all. It's akin to making a distinction between the deserving and the undeserving poor. It also doesn't really reflect what we know of God from the Gospels. There we have a God of huge extravagance, profligate almost, particularly in St. Luke, with all those lost things, lost sheep, lost coins, and lost younger wayward son. And also in the same Gospel in the rescue provided by the Samaritan to the man mugged on the Jericho road. The final demonstration, of course, of God's generosity is seen in Jesus, God's Son, a very part of God, who gives ultimately all that he is. He goes to his death for those who are, for the most part, want nothing to do with him or betray him. Only one of the thieves is grateful. The other just continues the mockery. In this context, the resurrection proves that generosity on this scale works, and it provides a model. Look what I can do and what happens afterwards, God says to us. You could try it. So we acknowledge on Thursday evenings by clapping those who do, and by keeping silence for those by whom another level of giving has been offered. And finally, we might try it ourselves, just a bit more for those who are not one of us. But I acknowledge that it's difficult. I find it difficult to change, to be generous, spirited with joggers and cyclists. And this is why I have to carry on saying, Christ is risen. Happy Easter.